Beep, beep. Kick tips that will change your life as a music producer. The first thing to focus on is the source material, the sample you've picked. If you have a kick that is dog pee, you're gonna need more than just sausage fattener to get it going. However, what I found as a producer is that having the right kick is all about picking the right sample. In this track here, we have this sort of kick combination with the bass, which I believe works pretty decently. However, what if I decided to go with the wrong kick, let's say a different kick? And this is a mistake a lot of people make, and they choose a kick from another genre to use in a genre. You know, so for example, here we have a drum and bass kick. It's the fact that it's the wrong environment. You're putting essentially a wrong kick in the wrong track. And a lot of the times there are great kicks out there. Even if you say you're using a house kick, putting it in a house track, it just means there's a better kick out there. Like the saying, there's more fish out in the sea. So if you're finding yourself putting a bunch of Waves plugins, the half of the catalog on a kick to make it sound good, then at some point or another, you have to think, there must be a better way. Layer your kicks properly. It seems like layering kicks in today's age is like a 21-year-old dude trying to get his smash count up. You're trying to get as many kicks in there because you think it's going to make a fat kick. But in reality, again, keep it simple. If you will be layering kicks, do it safely, which means use no more than 3 kicks. I'll give you guys the reason to layer 3 kicks together. Number one, you're going to want to have the main kick, which is going to be pretty much the first kick that you thought sounded good, but then eventually you realize this is dog. So we could say that's the body of the kick. So from there, we would grab an EQ8 and then just say, okay, this is going to be the body. Let's EQ out the highs. And all I'm going to want from this kick is from the waist down. From there, you're going to pick the transient of the kick, which is going to give the kick its identity. And of course, since we already have a layer covering the lows, we don't want that to be interfering with that. So we're going to cut, again, the lows out of this kick. And finally, the last layer is going to entail adding maybe a uniqueness factor in there if you want. So for me, I'm going to try adding a cowbell. To some people that might sound cool and whatever, it's all jokes, of course. This is where you use a layer that's maybe unique, like a Foley recording, etc. But again, it shouldn't be rocket science. You shouldn't be layering more than 3 kicks up. So don't be like Johnny at the bar trying to hit on every girl that walks in. Anchoring the kick. When I first started doing sessions with new students of mine that aren't really that adept at music production, this is the first thing that I teach them, the first technique. The main reason is that in the music production world, obviously there's unlimited possibilities and choices that we can make. So a lot of the times it can be a little scary. However, if I tell you every kick that you have in a track will always be at -6. From there, level everything around the kick, then it becomes a lot easier to implement a mix down. Okay, so for example, here in this track, we're gonna have just a kick. And it's already hitting at -6. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean is the peak of the kick is hitting at -6 dB. I don't mean the fader should be at -6, because here you can see I'm hitting at -12. I mean, I want that green blob to hit at -6. So if that green blob is all the way down here, then I can move the fader all the way up until I get to that -6, right? So that's what I mean when I say hit -6. From there, you can start to level stuff. Now, as you become a more experienced producer, you're going to realize that usually there's this fine line on where things should land in the mix. So a lot of times if you have your kick at -6, now I can tell my students or people that the bass will usually land between -12 dB to -6, depending on the track. But most of the time, this is the case for hip hop, for most genres, for trance, etc. Now, usually my goal once we anchor the kick is as we have the mix playing out, you can see that my mix is already revolving around -6 dB. Now, as we level stuff out, the point of all of this, again, anchoring the kick, is that we want our mix to revolve around a certain number, -6 dB for me. That should be the average. So that way we have a bit of headroom for mastering, and you don't need to do any crazy stuff in the master to get it to be at the level that most mastering engineers are going to be asking for. So that's anchoring the kick. Again, one of the best techniques, very simple to implement. There might be other terms for it, but this is the way I learned it. The notchness monster. Now this technique is probably one that you see in a lot of producers' kick drum EQ, and that is going to be the removal of the frequencies 400 to 500 hertz. Not full removal, but it's better to say a little bit of a notch down on it. Now, the reason for this is because when it comes to kick drums, this is the frequency where you get the cardboard box effect, where the transient it's very da-da. Okay, too much of it, obviously, as you can see, it clouds the track up. So if I remove this, the track feels a little bit more cleaner. And now, again, the removal of it, we're going to use my area code for my number, 562. Now, when I first learned this technique, I believe it was from Saderwick Production. Then I saw Mr. Bill do it a lot as well. So it's kind of been cemented now. Of course, you don't want to do this on every kick, but it doesn't hurt. Again, if you're going to be doing this, don't go too hard on it. Just slight. And then from there, if you go hard and it sounds good, maybe that's the right way to go about it. Just make sure you're in a good listening environment. But the reason we want to remove this is, again, because this is where the cardboard boxy sound comes from in a kick. And a lot of the times, most kicks will benefit from this little notch. Progress your kick drum. Now, in songwriting, we always want to progress stuff in a track. It makes the track a lot more enjoyable for our listeners, okay? The fact that you're not starting out balls deep, showing everything, all of your cards, is a good thing because you can always show them. And I believe while chords, melodies, leads get a lot of love when it comes to this, the kick drums don't. So giving you guys an example here, in the intro of a song, a lot of people already do this. They will omit a lot of the frequencies of the kick drum. So, but we can use that to our advantage so that we can create a moment in the song where the low end comes in from the kick drum, which will be a very strong moment. So you want to make sure it sounds good. Okay, so again, omitting certain frequencies from the kick, which a lot of people will do the low end in the intros and in the breakdowns, is a good way to kind of progress your kick. A lot of people used to get rid of the kicks, but now we're seeing a lot of producers just get rid of the low end so that when we go into breakdowns, we don't lose the groove and people can sort of groove in. I can still dance to this because there's a kick and a clap. I'm not there just having my hands wide open, which is what certain genres of music are going to want you to do, of course. But for a lot of the stuff I'm seeing currently, we're seeing that. Now, the other thing too is, as we talked about layers for the kick, in this track we do have a layer of a tambourine on the top of the kick. The kick was already pretty decent. But you can see how that top kick just gives a lot of edge to the kick. And now if I get rid of it on the track, we're going to put it somewhere over here so you can hear that. I can also omit it in the intro, so that way by the time we get to our first drop, then we get that. Okay, so we can progress our kick drum in various different ways, and that's a technique that I think is fair. A lot of people don't do it enough, and again, you can do that to make impacts. For instance, in the chorus of a song, the kick can have an extra layer, and in the verses, it can have more of it scope back, not the layer, so that way it creates a bit more energy moving forward. When it comes to processing kick drums, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Most you're going to be doing with kick drums is saturation, EQ, and compression, and you don't do anything crazy, because if you're doing crazy stuff and very drastic stuff, it's not the right kick. So going back to the Philosophy, which is a track that I finally got signed. Don't know when it's coming out, but did sign the contract. The kick in this track is going to entail of two kicks that we've already seen. But I'm going to show you guys, if you're doing very drastic EQ changes, very drastic saturation and compression, then it's not the right kick. See that as a sign of a red flag going, maybe I don't want to F with that. But what we want to do is, again, just very slight things that accentuate the kick because it's the right kick. So for instance, if I get rid of the processing, not the best, but if we put the notch EQ we talked about, from there, we're going to add a bit of saturation with the black box analog design plugin, or the HG2. This is what I love using. Very simple. I love plugins like this where it just gives you what it wants. The mix is going to be brought down on it, by the way, so it's more of a parallel processing kind of thing. It's not all of it on the kick. see the kick, it's hitting at -6 as well. So the perceived loudness got louder, or the perceived loudness is higher on the kick because of the saturation, the colored sound now that we're providing with the black box. Again, just a cool way to kind of see it, just a bit of parallel processing there. And really, that's about it. There's really nothing going on with the kick where it's like, whoa, and that's the point. You don't want to be putting half the Waves catalog on a kick. If you have to do that to get any sort of decent kick, then you're overthinking it, and you're not realizing that this is probably not the right kick for you. There's a lot of other kicks out in the ocean, guys. All right, guys, so those are going to be some of the kick techniques that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully, they're practical enough to use in any genre of music. But if I have to end this video by saying something, again, if you want to support the channel, make sure to head over to evilsounds.com, where you can find all of my sound design work. It keeps the build, the lights going, the camera rolling, and me looking a little chunky. It also keeps my tracks fat. Other than that, if you guys enjoyed the video, don't be scared to hit a like, leave a comment down below, and hopefully this video helps in any sort of way to get you to where you need to be at. With that said, much love. You guys take care, and you have a great rest of your day.